Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and important faces of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future. And today, we have a brief snippet about a very important figure. This will be an introduction only, and really is just a meat and two veg of the issue. Hopefully, as time goes by, we will be able to revisit this titan, a true hero of the Imperium of mankind. Again, I skipped a yarn at the start as I am concentrating on the Friday offering and hoping it does not drag into Saturday. Alas, I do not always move as fast as my schedule may permit, so just know I am doing all within my powers, meager as they are, to provide an entry I hope you will thoroughly enjoy. Now, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote Darnath Lysander, the Emperor's Wrath. Lysander is rare amongst space marines of the 41st millennium, for he was recruited on Terra itself. His 13-year pilgrimage towards becoming an Astartes began with his parents before his birth, following an oft-difficult path towards a pilgrimage to Terra from their homeworld that was interrupted by betrayal, enslavement, and the murder of his family. Lysander was kept alive by the charity of the Imperial cult and his own wits, learning to fight, at first for survival, and then to complete the pilgrimage his parents had begun. His road to Terra was fraught with peril, such as the devastation of War Grozdak and the horror of the Kersark heresy and subsequent imperial purge thereof. The determination of the pilgrim boy gradually became known in high places, and upon his arrival on Terra, he was greeted as a hero. At the time, Chaplain Shadris of the Imperial Fists was on Terra conducting chapter business and first heard the extraordinary young man's tale. He sought out the young pilgrim by the Pillar of Bone, a monument that was believed to have been erected on Terra to commemorate the Imperial Fist's courage in an unnamed campaign. But in reality, it was actually a sacred holy relic to those privy to the knowledge of its origins within the Imperial Fist chapter. The pillar was the last remnant of the great Imperial Fist fortress monastery that had once existed on Terra in the days of the Great Crusade. It had been destroyed during the Horus Heresy and the Siege of Terra, but to most of the huddled masses of the Imperium, the heresy was only a legend, and few would dare to openly claim that the forces of chaos had ever set foot on the sacred grounds of Terra. In the holes torn from the column by bolter fire were the scrim-shored hands of ancient Imperial Fist battle brothers. Part of Chaplain Shadris' sacred mission as a chaplain was to bring fresh relics of the Imperial Fist to the pillar, but he also came to mankind's homeworld to recruit pilgrims from across the Imperium who were deemed worthy of becoming aspirants of the chapter. It seemed to Shadris that Lysander had the blessings of Rogel dawn upon him. Lysander excelled on the harsh training fields of Juno and Ganymede, the moons of Jupiter, progressing through indoctrination and training with a speed seldom before witnessed. Under Shadris' tutelage, he learned that the Emperor was not a god, as the Imperial cult decreed, but a mighty warrior and visionary, from whose mortal flesh the Space Marines had sprung. Lysander rejected this at first, for faith had been the only sustenance he had known for much of his young life. However, he soon came to embrace this new truth, realizing that it made the Emperor no less a savior. Like all those who had come before him, Lysander pledged his life to uphold the Emperor's works, not as the helpless worshipper he had once been, but as a warrior, honoring the deeds of an illustrious forefather. Years passed, and Lysander went into Captain Justin's second company, the Swords of Terra, where he quickly rose to the rank of sergeant. Here, to the outrage of his peers, he cast out the official bolter drill, honed over many thousands of Terran years. Instead, Lysander trained his battle brothers in the more unorthodox techniques he had learned from Jonas Makan, the somber scout sergeant who had inducted him into the art of war. When Justin challenged Lysander about his breach of tradition, he refused to back down, arguing that effectiveness counted for more than blind adherence. However, in the end it was Shadris' intervention that prevented Lysander's demotion and censure. Even for a space marine, Darnath Lysander has led a long and bloody career. As sergeant, he was credited with the defence of Colonial Bridge, and hailed as the vanquisher of the heretics of Idunno. After leading the storming of the Eldari cruiser Blood of Cain, he was raised to command of the 2nd Company, and soon went to avert disaster in the Hadrek Tor planet strike. For 2 centuries afterwards, Lysander led the Imperial Fists' 1st Company with distinction, earning the highest praises his chapter could bestow. Then, in the latter years of Millennium 40, the strike cruiser Shield of Valor was lost to the warp, taking Lysander and a portion of the 1st Company with it. Initially, the Imperial Fist kept vigil, hoping that the warp would give up its prize. However, as the centuries passed, no trace was found of the Shield of Valor. In a somber ceremony, Lysander's name was added to the roster of the fallen, and a statue in his likeness was raised in the Hall of Heroes. Nearly 1,000 years later, the Shield of Valor re-entered real space within the orbit of Maladrax, an Iron Warrior stronghold on the fringe of the Eye of Terror. Ravaged by the firepower of 3 orbital fortresses, the Shield of Valor was swiftly disabled. The handful of survivors, Lysander amongst them, were incarcerated and subjected to weeks of torture at the hands of the Iron Warriors. That Lysander survived at all is ascribed to a dauntless refusal to accept defeat. Within a month of his capture, he broke free of his restraints. Unarmoured and initially with no weapons but his bare hands, Lysander tore a bloody path through the streets of Maladrax's planetary capital, stole a shuttle, and escaped. It is difficult to say which emotion rose strongest amongst the Imperial Fists when they learned that Lysander still lived. Joy that one of their greatest heroes had returned, or fear that his travails had left him tainted. For months, Lysander endured an exhaustive investigation in which every fragment of his being was tested. Though the chapter's apothecaries, librarians, and chaplains exerted every technique at their command, no trace of physical, mental, or spiritual corruption could be found. To the deafening cheers of his battle brothers, the oldest of which had not been born when the Shield of Valor was lost, Lysander was restored as the 1st Company's captain. Though the path was fraught with bloodshed and sacrifice, Lysander soon led the Imperial Fists in the assault that laid waste to Maladrax, repaying in blood the torture meted out in its dungeons. Before the dust had settled, Lysander was on the move once again, vowing to scour the Iron Warriors from the galaxy once and for all. This crusade has become a beacon of defiance and reconquest worthy of Rogel Dawn himself, for Lysander knows not how to accept defeat and girds himself accordingly. The combined layers of protection offered by his armor, Iron Halo, and Storm Shield turn him into a veritable walking fortress, as durable as any battle tank. Should the Imperium fall, he will surely stand atop the rubble alone, roaring defiance as the last suffocating darkness closes in. I have spoken to many who proclaim this an age of darkness, saying that only pride sustains us in its grasp. Perhaps that is so, but I will see the Emperor's light shine again, even if I must topple every fortress, crush every traitorous warlord, and grind 10,000 worlds to dust. These words I speak not out of pride, but out of duty. Duty to Primarch, to Emperor, and to mankind itself. Darnath Lysander, 1st Captain of the Imperial Fists. End quote. We shall see more of Darnath Lysander when I have consumed a few more books on him. Maladrax was quite fun, I have to say, and I do recommend it for those who are perhaps a little way on their journey of exploration of this magnificent setting. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this initial leg of the lore of the 1st Captain of the Imperial Fists, Darnath Lysander. Hopefully one day soon we will get into his later career and his present circumstances. I look forward to it with relish. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make time for fun. Toodaloo.